This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
We left off last chapter. What was happening? Oh.
Well, we're doing a perspective switch. Last chapter was Tom, Matt, and Rand. This chapter, we're jumping back to Perrin and Egwene.
Yeah.
And, of course, Elyas.
The chapter opens up and they're just kind of talking amongst themselves. But the first thing I have here is a nice long quote about Perrin's dreams, which we've been talking about a good amount. He had not dreamed about Baal-Zaman since meeting Elyas and the wolves. His dreams, as much as he remembered of them on waking, were of everyday things, just as he might have dreamed of at home, before Baerlon, before winter night. Normal dreams, with one addition. In every dream he remembered, there was a point where he straightened from Master Luhan's forge to wipe the sweat from his face, or turned from dancing with the village girls on the green, or lifted his head from the book in front of the fireplace, and whether he was outside or under a roof, there was a wolf close to hand. Always the wolf's back was to him, and always he knew that the wolf's yellow eyes were watching for what might come, guarding against what might come. Only when he was awake did he realize the dream seemed strange. I just thought that was a nice explanation of what's the first person to be removed from the burden of Baal-Zaman.
He's sort of discovered his guardians. These wolves, really the world of dreams is their world. Tel Riyadh is
the wolf dream. Although we do see Baal-Zaman show up, but the wolves seem to be able to kind of warn him, or it's not a regular Baal-Zaman dream.
They're able to protect him, yeah. I mean, I think that at some point he's able to... Perrin hasn't fully accepted the wolf in himself, and that leaves him still just a little bit vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And so the wolves are protecting him, but he hasn't quite accepted them, and so they're not quite able to prevent Baal-Zaman from making at least a little bit of contact.
And the next thing I don't know if you have, as the party's walking, they run into the Tuatha guard dogs.
Yeah, I've got just a few little points before there. Sure. I like the quote, "Sooner or later, there's always trouble when two humans are together."
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good Elyas quote.
Because he's very much a loner. And just as long as there's no humans, there's no gossip, there's no backstabbing, there's no politics, there's no war. But the second you get two humans together, then you're arguing over who has to pay the bill, and I mean it's just issues. You have things you have to figure out. And Elyas and wolves don't have that issue. Right.
For the most part, they sort of agree on a leader.
Right. I mean it's a little more about might, right?
Yeah, and some of it's intelligence.
Sure.
Was it Elyas says at some point that there's one of the male wolves could probably take Dapple, but they won't because they know that she's the smartest one.
That's right. That's
Something
right.
Like that.
That's when we first meet them, and he's explaining about the fact that she's the leader.
Oh, okay.
And Burn is not. He wants to just kill him.
Oh, is it Burn?
Yeah. And he's like, but nope, they're gonna listen to Dapple because she's smart. She's led them through tough times.
Also, I don't remember exactly which chapter this is from either. I think it's a thought that Perrin has where, no matter what, Hopper will always back Dapple. So if you pick a fight with Dapple, Hopper will fight you as well.
Hopper is just the most loyal wolf. I mean, he's extremely loyal to Perrin.
There's a lot of Perrin and the wolves in this area of the book.
Yeah, I really love this part. I love his bonding with the wolves.
Oh, yeah, the next couple of chapters are pretty intense, too.
They travel for about 3 days, sort of a 3-day passage of time. And there's not a lot of talking that's going on. Elyas isn't saying anything. Perrin's brooding, as he tends to do.
Yeah.
And I was thinking Elaine must be really bored.
Egwene? I thought you said Elaine.
I did say Elaine. Egwene must be really bored. There's just not a lot of conversation going on between the three of them.
Yeah, and Elyas is probably always having a conversation in his mind.
Yeah, I'm sure he's got just a running dialogue with the wolves going on. So he feels like he's in company, so he's not talking out loud.
And Perrin's just learning about this skill. or talent.
I don't think he's talking to the wolves much. I think he's just
Accidentally hearing them.
Yeah,
sort of.
and like trying to shut them out. And so he's like totally shut down because he's shutting everything down because he doesn't want to admit that he can hear the wolves are talking. The situation where they're not really talking to each other, everything's kind of tense, everyone's a little preoccupied, and then they run into the Tuatha'an, the traveling people.
Yeah, the dogs first.
Those mastiffs.
Yeah, scares the hell out of Bella. Let me see here. As they came close to the trees, as they're like approaching a little group of trees in this mostly giant open fields, I think. As they came close to the trees, 3 mastiffs burst from cover, broad-muzzled dogs as tall as the wolves and even heavier, teeth bared in loud rumbling snarls. And it scares Bella, and I think Egwene freaks out a little bit. And Elyas, we see Elyas use this little, he like whistles a long tone that I think it goes from high to low or something like that.
Yeah. Like with the whistle, the dogs start out standing, and then as the whistle drops, they also drop until they're laying down. Yeah. It's just sort of, I'm not sure if it's something that the dogs are trained to do and he knows because he's familiar with the Tuatha'an, or if it's just, instinctual. But he knows these mastiffs.
Yeah.
He knows these Tuatha'an.
And they're all freaking out. He does this little whistle. There's a hand motion that goes with it too, I see here. And he says, "See, there's no need for weapons." He says, "They look meaner than they are. They're meant to frighten us off, and they wouldn't have bitten unless we tried to go into the trees. Anyway, there's no worry of that now."
I mean, he's clearly made the signal that he is friendly.
Yeah.
So, very shortly the Tuatha'an come out. The Tinkers sort of remind me of the real world Romani. So I don't know if we've talked about.
Yeah, I always just figured that, that's totally what they are.
Right.
I mean,
I looked up the Wikipedia page for these folks, and they had on the Wikipedia page a brightly colored covered wagon.
Oh, yeah. That's a good idea. If you want to visualize what the Tuatha'an look like, there's photos from real life of like a great demonstration of what these big house wagons would be, with a little chimney and brightly painted, and same as the people, I think.
They're kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's like the Winnebago of the 1800s.
Yeah.
It's like you just have, and instead of an engine, you got your horses or your oxen.
You're always going to lose someone to a snake bite, so just continue on at a grueling pace.
Cholera. Doesn't Elaine get a little bit prejudiced about these Tinkers? Sorry, Egwene.
Elyas says there will be Tuatha'an people, the traveling people. They stared at him blankly. Then he added, "Tinkers." He's like clearly like already lost his patience with this conversation before it's even begun. "Tinkers?" Perrin exclaimed. "I've always wanted to see Tinkers." And they talk about it for a little. And, oh, yeah, it's Egwene. She says, like, we probably, like, we don't want to lose Bella. Like, if we get anywhere near the Tinker camp, like, they'll steal all our stuff.
Right. They're as bad as the Terran fairy folk, I think she says.
Yeah. She compares the two. At some point she says, probably because the Terran fairy folk are as great a thieves as Tinkers. They'd no doubt end up stealing each other blind. Oh, and that's why they never come towards Emmons Field. Because if what Egwene's saying is that if they would have to go through Terran Ferry, and they would be spending so much time robbing each other back and forth that they'd never make it all the way down. That's basically what she's saying.
It's ridiculous.
And then Elyas says, "Including all your infants?" Elyas asked dryly. "Kidnapped children and all that?" He spat, and she blushed. "Those stories about babies were told sometimes, but most often by Sen Buey or one of the Cogners or Coplans. The other tales everybody knew. The Tinkers make me sick sometimes, but they don't steal any more than most folks. A good bit less than some I know."
Perrin's interested in looking at their mending work.
Yeah.
He wants to see how because he's like, I think Mistress Luhan, who's the wife of the blacksmith, has a tinker mended pot that she's like, it's better than new. And you know Master Luhan's got to be like a little bit peeved off about that.
A talented blacksmith by all accounts.
Yeah, very, master blacksmith.
Yeah. We don't ever get to see like how that would be done or anything about that really.
No, that's unfortunate that there's not much about what the tinkers actually do to repair. I assume it's just little hammers.
Maybe.
I don't know much about repairing
I really don't either.
pots.
Or how you would even go about doing that.
Yeah.
Welding. You'd have to weld a piece in there if there's a hole in it.
But I imagine you can do that through hammering.
Cold hammering like copper or something.
Well, tin. Aren't they tin pots?
I don't know about that either. You tell us, Internet.
That's what I thought the word tinker came from, is they work on tin.
Oh. Could be.
But I have no idea if that's true. I think I'm making it up. So it's a traditional last name for someone who mends pots.
Sort of wondered how you break a pot, but I guess if it's made out of tin, it could...
Yeah, you get a little crack in the bottom and you just maybe mend it back together. Tinkering is the process of adapting, mending, or adjusting something in the course of making repairs or improvements.
The dogs trailed along beside them, wagging their tails, as Elyas led the way into the trees, skipping apart. Like everyone else in Emmons Field, Perrin had heard a good deal about the Tinkers, even if he had never seen any, and the camp was just what he expected. The wagons were small houses on wheels, tall wooden boxes lacquered and painted in bright colors, reds and blues and yellows and greens, and some hues which he could not put a name. The traveling people were going about work that was disappointingly every day, cooking, sewing, tending children, mending harness, but their clothes were even more colorful than the wagons. And he goes on to describe that. It's a good introduction to them.
Just a little bit of their everyday lives.
Maybe I should just move on a couple sentences. Abruptly, the music stopped, and he realized all the Tinkers were looking at him and his companions. Even the children and dogs stood still and watched, warily, as if on point of a flight. For a moment, there was no sound at all. Then a wiry man, gray-haired and short, stepped forward and bowed gravely to Elyas. He wore a high-collared red coat and baggy, bright green trousers tucked into knee boots. "You are welcome to our fires. Do you know the song?" Elyas bowed in the same way. "Your welcome warms my spirit, Mahdi, as your fires warm the flesh, but I do not know the song." "Then we seek still," the gray man intoned. "As it was, so it shall be. If we but remember, seek, and find."
So, yeah, it's just another little bit of introduction to the traveling people.
I like their little customs and rituals. I think it's interesting. Also, I don't remember if we were talking about this on mic or off last time we were together, but we were talking about the term Mahdi and how we've seen that in other novels.
Oh, yeah.
Especially Dune.
Definitely.
Muad'Dib, and I think Mahdi is like the term, like their Karakarn, the Karakarn of the Fremen. I can't remember all this. Last time I read this was like 6, 7, 8 years ago.
Yeah, Muad'Dib is, I think is Paul Atreides.
Is Muad'Dib like his given name by the Fremen that's like named after the mouse?
Oh, I think the mouse name is something different. I think Muad'Dib is more of a prophecy name.
Okay.
Whereas the name of the mouse,
there were two that were super similar.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting. Yeah, their physical description is similar. Dune was written about 20 years before this.
It's definitely a reference. Well, I mean, at least they're pulling from the same source.
Yeah, I think so.
You know, I wouldn't say this is a copy of Dune. I would say they're both pulling from...
Oh, no, I just like it when I see echoes like that.
Oh, totally.
That's yeah.
Well, and I think that a lot of the Aiel echo the Fremen. I think there's some really close echoes between the Aiel. Yeah. Those two groups of people really
the
do.
The environment and everything, the warrior culture.
I think even at the like shade and water being precious.
Oh yeah! Whoa! Yeah, I didn't even think of that.
I think even as a kid, I picked up on that parallel. Like one of the first times I read this, I was like, "Oh, these guys are like Dune."
Yeah,
yeah. The Fremen and Dune, they're very. The Aiel and the Fremen are almost the same people. I have trouble separating them in my head sometimes.
Super similar.
I keep expecting Avian to be like the spice must flow. Lean into Rand closely and be like, yeah, that's where we get our powers. It's from the spice.
The source must flow.
The spice.
Yeah.
Oh, the source. The source must. That actually works pretty well. The source must flow.
Must flow.
Yeah. No, that's really good.
Rain, and Mahdi is, I believe, a title that means like the male leader.
It means seeker.
Seeker. Okay.
So he's basically the person in charge of looking for the song. He is seeking the song, which is their goal.
Rain, the Mahdi of this group of Tuatha, brings them over to hit like his family's fire and essentially invites them to dinner.
I want to interrupt because there was a little bit of a paragraph that I really liked when the dogs and the wolves come in. Basically, I think the wolves are a great analogy for Perrin, and the dogs are the Tuatha, and sort of their interaction and how he describes how the dogs look at the wolves and the wolves look at the dogs is describing the relationship between Perrin and the Tuatha.
That's a great point. Or Elyas and the Tuatha.
Or Elyas and the Tuatha.
Same thing.
Yeah, I think you have even Egwene in some level is a bit of a hunter and a killer.
Yeah, she's wild to them. She doesn't. Egwene becomes a really dangerous human being later.
She does.
She's just as prone to violence as Perrin or Elyas are, and the Tuatha kind of detest and look down on that. Whereas
Absolutely.
in the opposite direction, the same thing is happening, where Elyas sort of detests and looks down on them for letting go of their, I don't know, what would you call it?
But he says basically they were contemptuous of dogs who had given up freedom to sleep by a fire. You're giving up the freedom for security.
Yeah.
And they're very contemptuous of that. That just like, why would you, you're an idiot. That you're giving up your freedom. And nothing's worth that.
You're right. You see the exact same dynamic between like Ela and Elyas, where they both sort of like are kind of looking down their noses at each other almost. Like they are both.
But I think they also understand where the other person is coming from. Because, I mean, I always feel Elyas has some fondness for the Way of the Leaf.
Yeah, and there's no ill will or bad feelings. I think they just like strongly disagree with each other's values.
Yeah, I mean, I think civil discourse is what's going on here, which is something we haven't seen a lot in our lifetime. Yeah, I think that they have a legitimate disagreement, and I think it basically comes down to shadow spawn.
And we see that argument soon, actually. But the next thing that I have is they get to the fire and Aram shows up. As Perrin and the others were taking their places, a slender young man wearing green stripes strolled up to the fire. He gave Rain a hug and Ela a kiss, and ran a cool eye over Elyas and the Emmons Fielders. He was about the same age as Perrin, and he moved as if he were about to begin dancing with his next step. "Well, Aram," Ela smiled fondly, "you have decided to eat with your old grandparents for a change, have you?" Her smile slid over to Egwene as she bent to stir the kettle hanging over the cook fire. "I wonder why."
Mom, stop pointing it out.
Aram settled into an easy crouch with his arms crossed on his knees, across the fire from Egwene. "I am Aram," he told her in a low, confident voice. He no longer seemed aware that anyone was there except for her.
She's cute.
And he goes on to be suave.
Yeah. She's cute. He's cute. There's some flirting going on. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is maybe the only moment in the book where I really like Aram. He just kind of walks right up and he just he's confident and sly.
Yeah.
He has like a real silver tongue here. The next thing he says, I think, is, "I've waited for the first rose of the spring, and now I find it at my grandfather's fire."
Oh, that's smooth. That's smooth.
Perrin waited for Egwene to snicker, then saw that she was staring back at Aram. It's so bad, but at the same time that he's just really good looking.
Right. Rule number one. Be good looking. Rule number 2, don't be bad looking. And so then that sort of gets them into discussion of the way of the leaf.
Yeah. I was just going to say, we know that he's really good looking, and we see later that Egwene is really tense and stressed through this whole episode. I think maybe even more than Perrin is. And we don't get to see her perspective very much, but she says later that she just wants to run around and dance and like be swept off her feet, and she wants to lose herself for a minute. And like, you can't really blame her when this situation is presented to her to be like, yeah, sure, yeah, let's do that.
She is on an adventure.
Yeah.
She is like really interested in living it up and having a good time. And Perrin's like, I just want to go home. And she's like, come on, let's go dance. Like, This is fun. There's cute, like, there's all these cute girls doing the like tangaria or whatever
Nobody's trying to murder us.
No, like, like
it's a big improvement on the last few days.
I want to dance with this cute boy, and you should watch those girls dance their belly dance or whatever it is that seems to be extremely.
Yeah, I see it as pretty much like a belly dancing.
Yeah, that's sort of what I'm thinking of, but also maybe a little bit of like something else hula going on. Yeah, hula.
I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, it's very sexy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a good description in a while. Let's see.
But really what they go into here is the way of the leaf.
Aram's trying really hard to flirt with Egwene, and Perrin's a little annoyed by that. And they're like mid-conversation. He's like, so those dogs are yours. Look as big as bears. Surprised you let the children play with them. Aram's smile slipped, but when he looked at Perrin, it came back again. He said, they will not harm you. They make a show to frighten away danger and warn us, but they have been trained according to the way of the leaf. The way of the leaf, Egwene said. What's that? Aram gestured to the trees. The leaf lives in its appointed time, and does not struggle against the wind that carries it away. The leaf does no harm, and finally falls to nourish new leaves. So it should be with all men and women. Egwene stared back at him, a faint blush rising in her cheeks. But what does that mean? Perrin said. Aram gave him an irritated glance. It means that no man should harm another for any reason whatsoever. The seeker's eyes flickered to Elyas. There is no excuse for violence. None. Not ever. Oh, I forgot to mention that Rain interrupted there. This is Rain talking now, not Aram. What if somebody attacks you? Perrin insisted. What if somebody hits you? If a man hit me, I would ask him why he wanted to do such a thing. If he still wanted to hit me, I would run away, as I would if he wanted to rob or kill me. Much better that I let him take what he wanted, even my life, than that I should do violence. And I would hope that he was not harmed too greatly. But you said he wouldn't hurt him, Perrin said. I would not, but violence harms the one who does it, as much as the one who receives it.
I love that idea.
The next thing that happens is Perrin says, but enough, Elyas growled. He's like already pissed that this philosophy is coming out. There's something that he just detests about it. And he says, Rain, it's bad enough you trying to convert village younglings to that nonsense. It gets you in trouble almost everywhere you go, doesn't it? But I didn't bring this lot here for you to work on them. Leave over.
And I see that as a bit of projection on Elyas's part. That like he would really love to follow the way of the leaf if like everyone, because people make trouble and he doesn't want to deal with trouble. Yeah. If he could just be peaceful all the time, Elyas would be happy.
And leave them to you, Ela says. And she's doesn't say anything further, but that's kind of the essence of. I really see this agreement or disagreement most strongly between Ela and Elyas. I mean, Rain's there representing the way of the leaf and explaining the philosophy, but it seems like Ela has a lot of emotion about it in the way that Elyas does in the opposite way.
Yeah,
see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and sort of Rain is not the
Rain's
judge, but
yeah,
right,
yeah, maybe a little less judgmental,
right, but a little sort of neutral party,
yeah,
acting as the go-between. But yeah, no, I mean, I love the way of the leaf. I really think that doing violence is harmful. Yeah, I've always thought that. Yeah, it really is. Not to other people, but to yourself.
Just escalate until somebody's dead in any big sorts of violence,
or until someone's hurt.
Yeah.
Which is not to say I've always been able to be perfect and follow that advice, but I try.
And this next part is the Perrin's argument that you were just talking about, where Perrin says, I don't mean to offend you, Seeker, Perrin said slowly, but, well, I don't look for violence. I don't think I've even wrestled anybody in years except for feast day games, but if somebody hit me, I'd hit him back. If I didn't, I would just be encouraging him to think he could hit me whenever he wanted to. Some people think they can just take advantage of others, and if you don't let them know that they can, they'll just go around bullying anyone weaker than they are. Some people, Aram said with heavy sadness, can never overcome their baser instincts. He said it with a look at Perrin that made it clear he was not talking about the bullies Perrin spoke of. I'll bet you get to run away a lot, Perrin said, and the young Teaker's face tightened in a way that had nothing to do with the way of the leaf. So that got pretty petty pretty quick. Maybe best to leave this debate over to the adults who are at least doing a better job at not openly being openly hostile.
Yeah, those are just two teenagers sniping at each other, arguing over Egwene.
Yeah, they're kind of fighting over Egwene.
They're definitely fighting over Egwene. But they're using the way of the leaf as a bit of a proxy war going on there.
Yeah. Bet you get to run away a lot. I imagine he says it just like that.
Bet you get to run away a lot.
It's just a very unparent thing to do.
No, totally. It's a good dig.
It's a snipey. He doesn't get snipey very much.
No, not very often. And sort of, I like the analogy of I think Rain says, the mighty axe does violence to the helpless tree and is harmed by it. And I sort of like that analogy that every time even if something's softer than you, by damaging it, you're also damaging yourself.
Yeah.
And even if that's relatively small amount of damage, you can add up over time and really cause problems in the long term.
It's an interesting analogy. The next thing that I have is Perrin asks Ela and Rain what happens if somebody leaves the way of the leaf. I have Ela stared in the direction her grandson had gone. The lost cannot be happy. This is also, I mean, it's not even a foreshadowing. It's just kind of like a direct inference of what's going to happen in the future.
Well, you watch Aram walk away, and then you start talking about the lost.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, he of course becomes...
Which is interesting because, for a bunch of different reasons. Because Ela's pretty much directly implying that she fears that her grandson's will go this route.
I sort of think of it as the Darth Vader route, right? He can't control his emotions, and so he turns to the dark side of violence.
And Perrin is a major influence on him later, which is interesting.
Oh, through the whole series.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of funny to think of how
this starts.
Like, there's a whole situation where, I mean, we see them and introduce them, and then later they come back. And they almost all get wiped out by Trollocs. And Aram basically turns over his loyalty to Perrin entirely when his family is killed.
Right.
Which is such a wonderful echo of when Rand goes into the Terangrial and sees the past, when the Aiel pick up the spear for the first time and kill someone to protect his sister.
Oh my god, it's that story.
It's the exact same story. Aram is going through the same journey that the Aiel go through.
I never even made that connection. But there's this connection here where Ela refers to people who leave the way of the leaf as the lost. The Aiel refer to the Tuatha as the lost, or the lost ones.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is, from being separated for so long, it's interesting that they're using the same term to describe
each other, basically.
Yeah, and
they've both lost the way.
Same ethnic group. I mean, they were at one point. It's been thousands of years.
Yeah, I assume the Tuatha have bred with most of the people of mainland.
It sounds like it, because it sounds like they look a lot more like the Emmons Fielders than say the Aiel would. The next thing I have is the story that Rain has heard from some of the other Mahdi.
They do mention that, because they're talking about the Aiel here, sort of their interaction with the Aiel and how, they watch from a distance. And I noticed they mention some of the young men go alone, thinking for some reason that they've been called to kill the Dark One. And those are the channelers of the
Right.
Aiel.
Tradition amongst the Aiel. Is it that the wise ones who find male channelers tell them that their destiny is to the Dark One, or die while hunting the Dark One, or something like that?
I don't think so. I think that's just like Aiel tradition is once they discover that they can channel, they basically attack the waste.
I see.
And of course, they think they're all going to die.
Right.
That's not.
That it's a suicide mission. Go down, take as many shadow spawn with you as you can, since you're going to go down anyway.
Since you're going to
Whatever
go
you
insane, right? Like, instead of us just killing you, why not sacrifice yourself by taking out as many Trollocs as possible?
Great idea in theory.
In theory.
It makes sense. In theory.
But basically, the Dark One was like, oh, yeah, keep sending me more channelers. I'll just convert them.
Right.
And so he's bred some on his own, but some of them he's basically used the 13 Aes Sedai, 13 Fades in a circle and forcefully converted them over to the dark side.
Yeah. I don't think that we even know about them until maybe A Memory of Light. Is it that late?
I'm nodding.
It's either that or maybe the book before it, but
Towers of Midnight.
that could be, yeah. We see the red veil of the honorless.
And then they've got the filed teeth if they're channelers. Or is
that what earlier I was just rereading the last battle, just for giggles, and I saw the thing about the filed teeth, but I didn't figure out what exactly it denoted. Like
So I think the filed teeth are the channelers who have been converted forcefully.
Oh,
So obviously they don't, there's 3 types of Aiel in this so-called these other Aiel. There's the non-channeling dark friends.
right.
There's the channeling dark friends, and there's the channeling converted dark friends.
Right, which isn't really a dark friend. They're more, it's kind of like under compulsion, but it's different.
Yeah, like demon, almost like replaced with some dark demon, like a piece of the Dark One somehow
Yeah.
infects them and like controls them.
I forget who this comes from, but don't we hear later that like the Forsaken prefer not to turn channelers in that way because it makes them less effective as far as being fierce in combat or intelligent clever strategists and things like that.
Right. It doesn't preserve
them
as much
less.
of their original personality. People are more versatile than whatever it is that infects them after they get converted. We hear about that when they're doing the Black Tower in I think it's the last book or the second to last book. We hear about how, all the Ashaman are getting converted. Mm-hmm. And one of them talks about that.
They're not as useful if you forcefully convert them.
Yeah, they're trying to get as many as they can to convert willingly. Yeah.
The honorless are interesting. That's the only word I can think of that I've heard anyone refer to them as, and I think that's from Bane and Chiad. Start calling them the honorless.
Oh, I was.
Aiel that is. Am I wrong? I could be wrong.
I think of them.
I forget, but
I think those are the ones who, after hearing about the history of the Aiel, they like lose their ability to. The ones who throw down their spears and run away.
The ones that
and join
become
the Shido.
Oh, I thought it was. No, I thought you were going to say the ones that decide to become permanently Guy Shane.
Yeah, I think that's correct. Yeah, the ones who throw the spears away and don't fight and become permanently, basically indentured servants.
Real Aiel.
Yeah,
I think is what they were before.
Yeah.
Basically, sworn dedicated servants.
Basically, yeah, they're trying to go back to a point, basically honor the oath they gave to be nonviolent. And that's that they've seen the vision and they're like, yeah, we have this oath to fulfill. And rather than continue to break it and live our lives, we are going to honor that oath.
Anyway.
So,
So they finish dinner.
and they get a message.
We see Elyas and Rain kind of kicking it after dinner and smoking some tobacco. After a time, Rain said, "Have you visited any of the TEOTW, Elyas, since you were with us last spring?" Perrin's eyes drifted open and half shut again. "No," Elyas replied around his pipe stream. "I don't like being around too many people at once." Rain chuckled. "I have heard a story since we last met, and if you have not heard it yet, it might interest you. It interests me, and I have heard it again and again, every time we meet others of the people. I'll listen. It begins in the spring, 2 years ago, with a band of the people who were crossing the waste by the northern route." Perrin's eyes shot open. "The waste? The Aiel waste?" And Rain goes on, "Some people can enter the waste without..." Oh, Elyas says, "Some people can enter the waste without being bothered. Gleemen, peddlers, if they're honest. The TEOTW cross the waste all the time. Merchants from Kyrian used to, before the tree." "The Aielmen avoid us," Rain said sadly. "Though many of us have tried to speak with them. They watch us from a distance, but they will not come near us, nor let us come near them."
I want to talk about each group that the Aiel let travel the waste and why they let them travel.
Oh, okay. Gleeman.
They value storytelling.
Yeah.
They really do.
And I think respect the trade.
Absolutely. And everyone loves a good story.
Sure.
And some juggling. So they're willing to let, that profession travel. And Gleemen have probably been traditionally very peaceful, never caused any problems.
And a source of information,
Absolutely.
Which is a lot of what Gleemen do. Also, peddlers, which is the next one.
Which, the Aiel need things, right? They need to trade. They have cotton. They have...
good steel.
They have good steel?
Yeah. Don't they not buy... don't they not buy weapons from the peddlers ever? Isn't that a thing? Like they have some of the best blacksmiths.
Oh, yeah. Well, because blacksmiths are also, they respect them greatly. Mm-hmm. They're the only people the Aiel don't make fight.
But I think, most importantly, the Aiel have water. Anyone that comes to the waste doesn't seem to know how to find it or how to find enough of it to survive.
Well, I get the feeling you need a complete map of everything to know where you can, because instead of traveling in a straight line, you have to travel from water source to water source.
Right.
And if you don't know where those are, you can wander in the desert forever without finding the next one, especially if you're trying to go in a straight line.
It's true.
And so the Aiel basically have a map of everything going on, and they can provide the water, or they can hide it from you, so you'll never find it.
Mm-hmm. Finally, the TEOTW.
The TEOTW, which of course they don't so much let travel in the waste as they won't come near.
Yeah.
So they never help them either. So when the TEOTW travel in the waste, they have to do so carrying their own water.
That sounds right. And that makes me wonder if that's the direct involvement of the wise ones saying, no, don't bother them. Don't talk to them either.
I have to wonder if there's some Jito in there, or just some shame.
I would think so. I don't quite know what's going on there, and I don't know that we ever got to hear wise ones talk about it. Clan chiefs would have an informed perspective too.
Right. Yeah, I don't think they ever really... They just talk about the TEOTW as the lost ones, the ones that we lost.
The poor, sad lost ones.
Right.
The opposite is true.
Right. The ones who fight are the ones who are damaged and lost.
But important to the pattern. I guess nobody knows that yet. But
no. Well, yeah. Important.
We need the Aiel later.
Of course.
The story Rain tells is talking about a group of maidens who had gone to the Blight to kill Trollocs, which is not something just male channelers do. Groups of young warriors will get together and do this sometimes, where they just go to the Blight and see how many Trolloc ears or whatever they can take back, or badges, or they just do this for fun because they're Aiel. They go murdering Trollocs for fun.
But those aren't suicide missions.
No.
They
no,
come
that's
back
not
from those.
Yeah. I think Elyas explains, Fardaris Mai, the maidens of the spear, fight right alongside the men. Perrin shook his head. Elyas chuckled at his expression. Rain took up the story again. Distaste and perplexity mingled in his voice. The young women were all dead except one, and she was dying. She crawled to the wagons. It was clear she knew they were Tuatha on. Her loathing outweighed her pain, and she had a message so important to her that she must pass it to someone, even us, before she died. Men went to see if they could help any of the others. There was a trail of her blood to follow, but they were all dead, and so were 3 times their number in Trollocs. Elyas sat up, his pipe almost falling from between his teeth. 100 miles into the waste? That's impossible. Jvek Kashar, that's what the Trollocs call the waste, the dying ground. They won't go 100 miles into the waste if all the Myrddraal and the Blight were driving them. You'll know an awful lot about Trollocs, Elyas, Perrin said. Go on with your story, Elyas said to Rain gruffly.
So basically, we have a group of Aiel maidens that have struck out into the waste, and they have discovered something. And that something is sensitive enough that the Fades and the Trollocs have followed them 100 miles into the waste.
We don't know what happened, but there's a pretty direct implication here that you see like right in this conversation, whereas Elyas says 100 Myrddraal couldn't drive enough Trollocs to like kill that many maidens 100 miles into the waste. But you know who could?
Ishmael.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, like,
but that seems like what's happening here. And somehow or another, this group of maidens ran into a group of Trollocs large enough that they were actually overwhelmed.
And we know Ishmael talks to the boys saying, the eye of the world won't serve you. He is trying to hide news of the eye of the world. He's trying to prevent that from spreading. He's trying to prevent this message from getting out. Yeah.
And it's pretty mysterious, like how they found out anything about anything. Maybe they ran into the Green Man, which is known to happen in that area from time to time.
That could happen. I think since they were raiding the Trollocs, that maybe they discovered something the Dark One was, that they overheard like a conversation or something like that.
Somehow they found something out.
Basically, they found out that the Dark One was trying to blind the eye of the world.
And they're probably confusing Ishmael with the Dark One, as a lot of people do at this point.
It's very possible.
Yeah.
But in some ways, they act as one, so it's not that much of a bad misinterpretation, because they essentially have the same goals.
Right.
And so the message is, Leaf Blighter means to blind the eye of the world, Lost One. He means to slay the great serpent. Warn the people, Lost One. Sight Burner comes. Tell them to stand ready for he who comes with the dawn. Tell them. And then she died. And just a couple little things to talk about in there. She obviously calls the Tuatha One the Lost One.
Yeah.
Leaf Blighter is one of the names for the Dark One.
That's a good one. I like that one.
Yeah. I don't see it used a lot, honestly.
No, only the Aiel and not very much.
No. I think they just call him the Dark One for the most part.
Yeah. I mean, they also have Sight Burner and I think Sight Blinder they used.
Yeah. Sight Blinder. I didn't see Sight Burner very often. This is maybe the only time I've seen that. It is Sight Burner in the book?
Yeah, it says that. The next line is, and then she died. Leaf Blighter and Sight Burner, Rain added to Perrin, are Aiel names for the Dark One.
Yeah.
But I don't understand another word of it.
Well, there's, he who comes with the dawn in there.
Oh, yeah,
Which is, of course, Rand.
Only the Aiel know what that is, though.
Right. But we see that this message is very much directed for Rand, right? It says, tell he who comes with the dawn.
Or tell them to stand ready for he who comes with the dawn.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, which also makes sense because I think even when the Aiel find out that he who comes with the dawn is there, the Karakarn has come, a lot of them are pretty terrified because of their prophecies.
Well, and they are right now over the mountain looking for Rand.
Yeah.
And I wonder if, that message got through to them, that it was time to start looking.
I would think that somehow or another this message got passed and the wise ones found this message or learned something somehow.
They may have also had some prophecy dreams about Rand and his coming unrelated to this.
True.
That they knew he was he who, they sent the clan chiefs over the mountain to find he who comes with the dawn. They may have gotten that from a prophecy dream, or this message may have gotten back to them.
And we know that the Tuatha heard this message about a year ago.
Right.
So by in that time, there could be Aielmen all over Randland.
Which is pretty much what we see. Perrin notes that the Eye of the World had been in his dreams, which I think is interesting, that he doesn't mention that Baalzamon had said it. And then it ends with a little bit of a joke here where he says, this is the first of many where we get the whole, oh, I wish Rand was here. He knows what to do with girls.
Oh.
And all three boys end up thinking that about each other multiple times.
Oh, here's something I wanted to put out there. This is what I was talking about earlier. I have Perrin talking about Aram here, and he says, he reminds me of Will Alcine. You always had enough sense to not let Will put you in his pocket, who's like the ladies' man of Emmonsfield. Aram is a gentle boy who's fun to be with, she said in a tight voice. He makes me laugh. Perrin sighed. I'm sorry. I'm glad you had fun dancing. Abruptly, she flung her arms around him, weeping on his shirt. Awkwardly, he patted her hair. Rand would know what to do, he thought. Rand had an easy way with girls, not like him, who never knew what to do or say. I told you I'm sorry, Egwene. I really am glad you had fun dancing. Really? Tell me they're alive, she mumbled into his chest. What? She pushed him back to arm's length. Rand and Matt and the others. Tell me they're alive. He took a deep breath and looked around uncertainly. They're alive, he said finally. Good. And I feel like that really broke down Egwene's actions throughout this chapter. I like that exchange a lot.
And their relationship. That they really are, they love each other and they're friendly and they turn to each other for comfort, even if they don't talk a lot.
Yeah. I don't think she's actually interested in Aram in any way, other than in like listening to him play music and dancing and...
Well, it's fun to flirt. It's fun to dance. It's fun to,
do it all the time.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with flirting. She is just experiencing for the first time the ability to flirt with somebody who she doesn't,
who isn't like
in her village and in her life all the time. It's just be nice to flirt anonymously with some cute dude, right?
Right.
Like I think we were at the bar and there was someone that was hilarious.
Drinking and talking.
I was in the bathroom and I unlocked the door, and right as I unlocked it, she opened it. And it was one of those weird things, like where you're like, wait, you're like hands on the doorknob, and it like it's yanked out of your hand, and you're like, hi, like, do you want to come in? It was just a very awkward situation. So that was me earlier at the bar.
I hate lines for the bathroom, if only for that reason.
Yeah.
It's the worst.
That vacant, not vacant thing is good. When it's like the green-red thing.
Yeah.
Anything else for that chapter?
Oh, I think I might have one more thing, actually. In the distant night, the wolves howled the first thin silver of the moon toward the horizon, and he shivered. Tomorrow would be time enough to worry about the wolves again. He was wrong. They were waiting to greet him in his dreams. And I just wrote, the very last thing I wrote was Perrin broods. That's at the end of the chapter.
Get used to it.
Yeah, he's a brooder. I get it though. I'm kind of a brooder.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with a good brood. Yeah, I enjoy it.
Get off my back. I'm just in a bad brood.
Right. Yeah. Man, life sucks. Sometimes you got to brood about it.
Life does suck. It's kind of bullshit.
Yeah. We should not talk politics before we start the podcast.
starting off today having missed our last recording session, but also due to a experiment gone terribly wrong, we lost our the episodes that we recorded previously. So usually we're like a couple ahead, and now we're one behind.
So I do apologize for not getting stuff out last week. It was Murphy's Law.
I'm getting a bunch of emails. Wild. Everybody's like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
Sorry.
A couple of things happened. You had a meeting at work, so you missed a week, and
ran super late.
And I had a problem with the recording software where I tried to make the sound quality better, and instead totally messed it up.
Yep.
Yeah, it was. I tried everything to try and make it listenable again, but it really was just.
We just
junk.
Earlier, I listened to, I guess what the end product, like Seth trying to fix it, and it kind of sounds like. Have you ever listened to someone talk on the other side of a fan? That's sort of what it sounds like.
Yeah. There was definitely an intermittent cutting out of the noise, so it was terrible. It was really bad. So instead of subjecting you to that, we did not come out with an episode last week, and we're re-recording episode 25.
Yeah, we'd rather send you nothing than garbage. Redo.
And we had other technical issues this week. You lost your phone.
That's true. My phone died.
Yeah, so communication was difficult for a little while.
Yeah.
And then I lost the charger for my computer.
Oh, right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, which makes it... It's one of those old computers where the battery lasts 5 minutes when it's not plugged in, and that's about it. So it pretty much has to always be plugged in. It's a 2009 MacBook.
Yeah.
That we do all this work on. So it's it's a nice old computer, but it's old faithful for me. But the battery is pretty much dead. So I lost the charger, and it took me 4 or 5 days to replace it, and that entire time I was not working on the podcast. So.
You were out at your parents' on the coast.
Well, they're not quite on the coast.
Oh, right. I just think of it that way.
Right. They're down on the river. They're in Rogue River. I took a weekend visit to see them, which meant... Well, that's where I lost the charger, technically.
Oh, did you lose it? I thought you just forgot to bring it.
No, I brought it with me, and it never made it. I have no idea where it is.
Gremlins.
I think it's in my parents' house somewhere.
Probably.
But they only moved in a couple months ago, so they're it's a new house for them. I think I stuck it somewhere and then forgot about it, and they haven't found it.
Oh, well. Here we are.
Yeah. So now we're a week later and giving this another shot.
Chapter 25, take 2.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or your favorite podcast client.
Bet you get to run away a lot.